So the Chelsea chop is just a phrase coined by gardeners to remind themselves that the end of May, the week of the Chelsea Flower Show, is a good time to prune back some of their perennials. But it's not a hard and fast rule, so don't beat yourself up if, you know, for whatever reason you can't get out that week. It really doesn't matter. A few weeks either side, and you'll be absolutely fine. So in answer to the question, is it too late to prune your perennials in June? I would say no, it's definitely not too late. Go ahead and do it. The Chelsea chop, that is basically the procedure where gardeners prune back their perennial plants by, say, a third or up to a half to stop them continuing to grow too leggy, too quickly, and flop in their borders. By pruning them now, you temporarily stunt the plant's growth, and when it does start to grow again, it grows much more slowly, and it starts to branch out. I've got my snips. I'm going to show you how to do it, and the plant grows much sturdier and doesn't flop. Right, so phlox is a good example. This is a nice sturdy plant here. So we'll work on this one here. That's a good example. So if you can see, we've got a nice set of leaves there, another set there, and a set there. What I would be tempted to do is I would take it right down to that set of leaves there. And you can't even tell that I've snipped that off. But what I'm guessing is that most of you who've clicked on my video aren't so much worried about plants that look like that. You're worried about plants that look more like this. So this is a sedum, an ice plant. And you can see how it's just flopped out from the center. And I've got lots of these sedums all over the garden. I've got another one up here doing exactly the same thing. So I'm going to show you what I do with my sedum, because these sedums here, this ice plant, I know doesn't flower until very late summer. So what happens is in my garden, it'll just stay like this. It'll flop more and more until it's lying horizontal. It'll crowd out all of my other plants, geraniums, begonia, everything will get pushed to one side. I've got daisies here, they're already leaning. So I guarantee you, if you cut this type of sedum down now hard, in a matter of weeks, it will grow again much more slowly. It'll be a rounded dome, and by the end of the summer, you'll get a lovely cluster of flowers on it. So I would say don't be scared. I'll show you what I'm going to do on this. Right, I hope I've got the camera positioned correctly there. So what I would say in this case is go right the way down to the bottom, because I've got a lot of empty stem there. You just chop it all away. Be brave. It will come back, I promise you. And I'm talking about sedum here. Some people's sedum doesn't grow as quickly as this, and you might have a nice shaped little mound already, and you wouldn't need to do such a drastic cut. But I did this last year and it all came back and looked great. But I have discovered by accident the perfect way to stop your sedums from flopping in the first place. So I'm going to take you outside my garden wall to a sedum that I cut back last year. And I'm amazed at the difference. But we'll concentrate on this. I'll not do that one as well. I'll do that one later on. I just want to get through as many types of perennials that you can chop back as possible. So yes, that will all come away, and if you visit my garden again, I'll show you how that's sprouting away. But whilst you're cutting your plants back, and again, I'm sorry for repeating myself because said exactly the same thing on last year's video, is I always have a few little pots filled with multi-purpose compost handy. You take the stem that you've just cut off, cut it say back to there, take the bottom leaves off like that, cut the other leaves in half to take all the stress off the roots that are going to grow out the bottom, and then you just plonk it down the outside of the pot like that, and you fill a few pots up like that, and these cuttings, these tip cuttings, will all root over the course of the summer. So what I do is I don't then take each individual rooted cutting out and plant that on separately, or you could do that, but I just tip the whole thing out. All the roots will have meshed together, and I plant the whole thing in the garden, and then you've got a much more established little plant. I wish I had some footage of this year. I've done it with monarda, with phlox, Propagating, and I've got some lovely, really well established little plants that I've planted out in the garden now. Do one more tip cutting for there, and it's really just an excellent way of multiplying your favorite plants, and it costs you absolutely nothing. There we go. So in a matter of weeks, that will be a new little sedum. So this plant here is a phlox, just like the one that I showed you first, but this one here is monarda. It gets a beautiful red flower on this, so you can see the difference between the two plants, hopefully. I'll zoom in so you can see what I'm doing, hopefully. So I'll just move the phlox out. Actually, I'll prune these ones down, then they're out the way. So some people just do a straight cut right across. I tend to do more of a staggered cut. So I would cut that one down to there, maybe that one down to there. You might prune back one stem in three, in which case you would get a much longer flowering season from them. I'm going to take that one down to there, that one down to there, there, and there. And then I'll show you with this one here is a good example of what happens. Can you see there? That's where I've made the cut, and I've got two little shoots coming up there, so they will now develop into branches, and I'll get flowers on here, and I'll get two flowers there rather than one. Now with the monarda, it's exactly the same. So this is my gorgeous monarda, and I've got quite a nice big clump of it there. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to take this stem down to there. You can see I'll just snip there. So you can have a look now, and I'm going to get another lot of branching stems out here, all with flowers on instead of one flower on the tip there. So I'll just put the tips over there. So on this, I think I'll do every other stem. So I'll take that one down to there. And again, it's best if you can do it by hand, but if you've got huge clumps, you have to sort of do it with either an electric trimmer or hedge trimmers. And then you tend to get that effect where you've got that ugly stump. Right, I've just seen a sticky weed in there. You pull him out, gets everywhere. Right, take that one down to there. that one to there. I'm just sort of staggering the heights. So again, don't waste any of these tip cuttings here. You don't want massive bits of the stem. So the bottom is waste. You can get rid of that. Cut these leaves off so that you're just left with that, and pop it in your pot. And I know for a fact I love this phlox. It's a lovely deep pink. So I know that the phlox that is going to grow in here is going to be exactly the same. There we go. You can just cut the leaves off like that. Stick that in there. And what I did last year is I just took all my cuttings, put them in a pot like this, and then stuck them out the way. I put them behind my husband's car on the drive. And then I was amazed when I came back weeks later and I just had these beautiful bushy little plants that I planted out in the garden. I've dotted them all over the place. So there we go. So yes, you could take these out individually and then you would have 4 plants. But if you just want to bulk up quickly, that will be a whole bushy little plant in a few weeks' time. Good job to stick a label in as well. So another plant that you can do that I have in my garden is aster or Michaelmas daisy. And if you look at the back there, that I'll climb into the border. Whoops. So yes, with the aster, just do exactly the same. Take it down by 1/3 to 1/2, because I know for a fact this one will flop. This is a nice clump, so I'm going to leave some at the back to come up, and I'll prune the ones at the front. And again, these are all good tip cuttings. So take it down to say there. Chop those little flowers off there. We don't need you. Okay, and the rest of the plant will now bush out. Right, so just to finish off, I'll show you what I discovered by accident, and this will guarantee that your sedums will never flop again. So this is the front border outside of my house. It's a tiny little scrubby area. It was full of bricks off when the wall was built. It's about 18 inches deep, and yet these are the plants that I can grow in this border. So this plant here is oxeye daisy, and what I've found with this one is, if I was going to do this plant, I would have done it about 4 weeks ago, and I would have chopped him down by half. But as I've said, for one reason or another, I couldn't get out in May and do that. So I've decided that I'm going to leave this oxeye daisy the way it is, even though it's already started to fall forward. And I'll put a picture of what this looked like last year. But I'm not bothered about that because it flowers beautifully. And then when it flops forward and it's all finished with the flowering, I chopped it right back. I got a second flush of flowers. I chopped that back later on in the year, and I still had another flush of flowers on it. So I'm not bothered about this. And also I think it's far too late. All these buds are just about to break out and it's absolutely gorgeous. But I do have some sedum in this border. So, and I'll put a link to last year's video where I'm chopping back this sedum. So same thing happened last year. If you can have a look in there, this sedum should be much shorter. It should be bushy. You know, it's got quite poor soil in there, full sun, it's got all the right conditions, but we've had so much rain over the last month that all of the plants here have sort of quadrupled in size. So with this specimen here, I'm going to chop it back just the same as I did in that side border. Now, last year, same thing happened. I had that clump forming like that, and I had this clump here, and look at the difference. Okay. So the difference is that last year I decided to dig that second clump out, and I was going to take it round the back of my house and plant it in the back garden. So I dug the whole thing up. You can see me, I cut it right back, and then I changed my mind and I decided, no, I'm going to put it, doesn't belong in the back garden, I'll put it back in the front garden. So I replanted it, and this is what has happened. The clump that I just gave the Chelsea chop to and cut back stayed small last year, but because it hasn't had its roots disturbed, it's grown really big very quickly this year and flopped again. Whereas the clump up here, which I dug out, disturbed its roots and then replanted, it grew back last year, stayed equally as beautiful as that clump. But this year, I don't even need to give it the Chelsea chop because it seems to have stunted its growth enough to keep it nice and short. So the difference is amazing. So this year, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut all of these flowers off. It looks cruel, it looks drastic, but it'll be fine. I'm going to dig the plant out, lift it up, and then put it straight back down again, which means I've broken through its roots and replanted it. It will grow again this year, I guarantee you, and next year it should stay small and bushy like that one. So I hope you take my word for it. Honestly, it works. I'm definitely going to do it. I'm going to do it with those clumps around there on the side border. Just dig them up with a spade and then drop them straight back down again. It's really sort of root pruning, isn't it? And I've just noticed my beautiful Jerusalem sage. I've been growing this for years, nothing to do with the Chelsea chop this, but I've been growing Jerusalem sage in different clumps around the garden for years, never had a flower, and all of my Jerusalem sage is flowering for the first time ever. Delighted with that. So everybody knows their own garden and their own plants, which ones flop, which ones don't. So I've decided that in my garden, I'm not going to Chelsea chop this perennial, which is loosestrife. It gets a lovely yellow flower. And I know that this doesn't flop in my garden. Another plant that you might have in your garden is valerian. I'll show you some valerian that's back out on the front. This plant here is called valerian. It grows like a weed. It is pretty. It gives a lot of nice pink colour early in the season. I don't bother giving this the Chelsea chop because as soon as the flowers fade, I cut it right back down to the bottom, and within weeks you get a much shorter second flush of flower. But as I say, I don't give that the Chelsea chop because when you look at this border, really it's the geum, the orange geum and the pink valerian that are giving the colour to the border. A much appreciated pop of colour early in the year. So there we go. I hope that that's helped you a bit, giving you the confidence to prune your perennials back and definitely try that with your sedums if they flop. So until next time, bye.